Hey guys, Zen here, and like many of you, my journey started on console with Rainbow Six Siege. I joined during a free-to-play weekend and pretty much instantly fell in love with the game. But if there's one criticism I had, or one thing I'll probably never miss about playing the game on console, it would be my abysmal aim using a controller. Now, don't get me wrong, I've definitely brought some of that potato over to PC, but on console, it's on a whole other level. Now, I wanted to make this video because currently, console is having somewhat of its own epidemic. You guys remember that PC just had that major issue with hackers that had access to aimbot, wall hacks, teleportation, the entire gambit of hacks, and it took a very long time for Ubisoft to finally nip this in the bud. But over on console, there's a whole other issue that a lot of people are starting to talk about and is really starting to bubble up in the community, and that is keyboard and mouse use on console. There are a lot of people that look at this situation as straight up cheating. If you're using keyboard and mouse on console, you are cheating in their eyes. And in my personal opinion, I full on agree based on the numbers alone. So to break it down just a little bit further for you guys, every gaming mouse out there has a DPI. For you console guys out there, it's basically the equivalent to sensitivity. Now, this DPI has a very wide spectrum, especially on the gaming mouse in today's market. You can go anywhere from 0 to 10,000 DPI on some gaming mice, which is an absolute insane spectrum. Now, let's be honest here. There won't be a lot of situations where you'll actually use 10,000 DPI, but it is there if you so choose. Now, with most standard controllers, whether that's an Xbox controller, a PlayStation controller, the equivalent again is the sensitivity in the analog sticks. For most of us, the analog sticks will never ever be as precise as a mouse. Of course, there are some crazy talented people out there that are really good with controllers and can make it look like they're using a mouse, but the reality is for most of us, just at a bare bones numbers, you'll never get that much sensitivity compared to a gaming mouse. Now, I say all of this because I believe there is one thing that Ubisoft might be able to do to kind of combat this in the long run, and I think that's to implement some sort of console aim assist. For those of you guys that don't know exactly what aim assist is, it's actually a way for the game to help you aim and lock onto your targets a little bit better. It's been used in first-person shooters for years and years and years, and it is currently used in many of the first-person shooters that you play today. Pretty much all of them, except for Rainbow Six Siege. Now, I totally understand why we have no aim assist on console for Rainbow Six Siege. This game is all about being tactical, it's all about being super sweaty, it's all about having that really fast, flick, twitchy aim in those really tense situations, and I totally understand why Ubisoft would like to keep it that way. But if we're at the point where people are using keyboard and mouse on console anyway, then you kind of have no choice but to buff up the people that are using a controller. And with aim assist, it doesn't necessarily have to be a competitive advantage. One big issue with aim assist that I think really would hurt this game is if you are dealing with more than one target in very, very close proximity. So if you could imagine you're running down a hallway and you come across two operators, one heads left, the other heads right, but as you aim down sight, the aim assist pulls you in a certain direction. Maybe it pulls you to the left when you want it to aim right, or maybe the opposite. In any case, I see that as worst case scenario, and it really is super dependent on how it's implemented in the game. If you think back to an old title like Halo 3, this had a ton of aim assist built into the game. It was to the point where you could just be looking at an enemy, and if they were walking slow enough, your Spartan would actually follow them with just the aim assist and with absolutely no inputs from you on the analog sticks. But if there's one thing we can all pretty much agree on was just how great that game felt to play. And for the most part, it remained super competitive for its lifespan. So it's not like the aim assist really gave anybody an advantage over anyone else, especially because on a baseline level, every single player had it. Call of Duty, whether you love it or you hate it, it's always been praised for its shooting mechanics, and even though it's not my personal cup of tea, I will admit it's a pretty good feeling shooter. Battlefield is another first-person shooter that has aim assist turned on by default on console. Now, I reference these games because even though these players can still use keyboard and mouse in these games, it's not nearly as much of a problem as it is in Rainbow Six Siege, especially on the competitive side. And the biggest difference that these games have to Rainbow, at least when it comes to shooting, is that Rainbow does not have any form of aim assist at all in the game. On console, when you're playing with a controller, there's this very floaty-like feeling you have when there's absolutely no aim assist, and I can distinctly remember it when playing Rainbow Six Siege. You never truly feel precise. Every shot really feels like if they're not directly in front of of you and you don't already have a clear line of sight on them, it almost feels random with every single gunfight. Now I know that might sound weird to some of you. You've probably been playing with a controller your entire life, and so you have no idea what using a mouse and having that level of precision feels like. So I can totally understand if you don't really get where I'm coming from. But it really wasn't until I switched over to PC and started playing the game over here that I realized just how inaccurate I really was on console with a controller. It's the exact same feeling that every single person who's currently using keyboard and mouse on console is having, and is the reason why they choose to do that over using a controller every single time that they log in. It's also the reason why they've spent upwards of $150 on third-party dongles to even have the capability of using a keyboard and mouse on a console. Now, an argument that I constantly hear when this subject gets brought up is, well, Zen, this has kind of always been a problem on console. What do you have to say about scuffs and elite controllers and gamer glasses and all those kinds of things? Well, I look at those kinds of accessories as ways to enhance your performance or kind of boost you and make you just a little bit better, just give you that little edge over your competition. But with a keyboard and mouse, we're talking about a completely different way to play the game. You're going from a controller with 20 or so buttons to an entire keyboard worth of buttons at your disposal. You're also going from analog sticks to a mouse with upwards of 10,000 DPI. There is absolutely no comparison when you really put it into perspective. One thing you do have to keep in mind though is that console may not forever just be a controller platform. There have been some leaks and rumors that have come up recently with the Xbox One having native support for keyboard and mouse on the console. And there have also been some rumors that Microsoft may be developing a keyboard and mouse peripheral for the next generation Xbox coming very soon. The biggest problem with introducing native support for keyboard and mouse on console in this generation is the level of fairness. If you develop these peripherals and release them to the masses today, you're pretty much going to have the same problem we currently have, just on a bigger scale. Put it this way, every Xbox comes with a controller, so everybody that goes out and says, I want to buy an Xbox, well, they're gonna get a controller. They have to additionally purchase a keyboard and mouse to be able to use it on their Xbox if this was the case. You'd also run into the issue of getting developers on board, including Ubisoft with Rainbow Six Siege. Rainbow is designed completely different on console. You have completely different controls for the most part, your FOV is much smaller, and of course the frame rates are a lot less on console, which all have an impact on keyboard and mouse gameplay, and all would take resources to change in the event of making keyboard and mouse native on console. There is no perfect solution to this, and it should also be noted that all of this is just a way to combat the keyboard and mouse usage that's already happening on console. I think adding aim assist is a pretty simple way to enhance all the controller players and make them just a little bit more competitive against those keyboard and mouse players, while also making the game a little bit more comfortable to play while you're shooting. I'm genuinely curious about some of the possible negatives when you put aim assist in a game like this. We all know it's about the intel and information being in the right place at the right time, and you don't want aim assist or some sort of magnetism to ever tell you or give you an upper hand against your enemy. So that, I'm sure, would be a very delicate balance. For me personally, I know there's no real way I can ever see myself going back to playing Rainbow Six Siege on console, and it's for these very reasons. I just don't feel accurate no matter what I do, and I've tried basically everything, guys. I've tried the Control Freaks, I've tried the Elite controllers and the scuffs, and really no matter what I do, I just don't feel super accurate. And of course, knowing that the enemy is using keyboard and mouse, sometimes in full 5 stacks, is the most frustrating thing that you could possibly deal with on console, because at this time, there's absolutely nothing you can really do about it. You can report them for it, but I'm not entirely sure if this is something that the console manufacturers or even Ubisoft themselves consider cheating at this time, so I'm not exactly sure how much good that'll actually do. It should also be noted that some people don't feel this way at all. There are some players who don't think it's cheating to use mouse and keyboard on console. It's just a matter of people using what can be made available to them, and given the fact that it hasn't been patched out and is clearly still an option, it's possible they're right, so I won't take anything away from that opinion. However, I don't share those same feelings. But that's everything, guys. Those are my thoughts on console aim assist as well as keyboard and mouse use on console. But now I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think keyboard and mouse is cheating on console? And if so, what should be done about it? Do you think aim assist is even possible in this game? Leave it all in a comment down below. If you did enjoy this video, please drop a like and subscribe with notifications if you're new. With that being said, it's been Zen.
I'm out.